thank you so much, Subrat, for joining us for this success story series. So, just if you could just tell us a little bit background about yourself, what do you do, and what is your professional background?
Yeah. So I'm from an engineering background. I did my bachelor's in computer science and engineering from a government college in my hometown.
Hmm.
After that, I joined an IT consulting company in Pune, where I had 6+ years of work experience. I started in travel and hospitality background, and then I moved to retail and e-commerce projects. The kind of work I was doing was the back-end handling of the web services and the applications, plus a little bit of front-end for the sales and marketing teams. So that was what I was doing there. And apart from that, I trained people there on technical skills, and I led teams of 4 to 5 people. So that was
Okay.
what I was doing.
All right. So, how many years of experience in total?
6.5 years of total experience.
All right. So, why did the thought process of doing an MBA come to your mind?
So when I was working in the company, moving across different kind of projects, I got a little bit of understanding of consumer behavior and how buying decisions are getting made. But that was from a technical point of view, because we are building tools for those things. Then I got in conversation with the senior people of our team, and they had an opinion that there is only so much you can do with an undergrad degree. If you want to get into the decision making part, getting from the back end of how things are moving in technical directions to the decision making part of it, you do need to get a master's. So I started researching for that, and after that, I actually made two kind of tools which I was working on the project. So a business intelligence tool I created for the sales and marketing team, and that tool gave them a little bit of overview of what kind of demographics and what seasons, what kind of purchases are getting made. So that was first where I got a little bit of feel of analytics and how it is working. Then I again asked my manager for giving me such kind of a project. So again, targeted notifications was getting sent to people based on the purchase history of how the people are doing on the sites. So those kind of projects, they got me interested in analytics, and for the growth in the same kind of tech role, I had to go for a master's, and that's when I made a decision to go for MBA.
Awesome, awesome. So, in terms of timeline, always first is GMAT. So you mentioned you got a 720 on your GMAT, right? So how long did you prepare for to get to a 720?
So I actually started almost a year back. I took my first attempt in November 2019, and I got 650 score, which was almost an average score for a Canadian school. But looking at Indian male ID demographic, it was not a good. It wouldn't have given me a good chance.
Hmm.
So I again wanted to take one more attempt, and I scheduled it in the March time, because it will give me enough time to get through the application process also, and it'll give me enough time to recharge and go through, I mean, the learning again. So I took a 3-4 months gap in between, and during that time I obviously made few decisions. Like initially when I started, I was looking at all kinds of materials, wherever I was finding it on the blogs or whatever kind of mocks. So I used to take all of that in, and that was a mistake that I made in my first attempt, which I improved upon in my second attempt. That you have to follow a single kind of a book for the concepts, and then overall guide obviously is the thing which you will have to attempt multiple times, and take a targeted mock tests, which are like the GMAT Prep kind of tests, which are according to the format of the
Hmm.
exam. So those kind of changes actually helped me in achieving a good score.
Right. So, working and then studying together, what was the key thing that you always focused on to make sure it worked well for you?
So my job had timings of 11 to 10 o'clock. So that was my job time. And so that gave me a very little time to actually do the studies. So weekends were the main part. That Friday evening you can start, and there you get a lot of time. Plus, because we were two people, I actually found one more person. So three people were studying together. So we used to practice together and have competition. So that actually helped. But in the daily time, initially when I started, I just wanted to focus on that. I take at least 2 hours every day to at least go through the concepts and mocks or the questions I used to do at the weekend. So that is how I started.
Hmm, interesting. So, more in terms of your whole application strategy, right? So, were you very clear that you wanted to apply to Canadian schools only, or what kind of research did you do to get to this decision that okay, you want to apply to say these kind of schools?
So I have friends who are there doing masters in US and Canada and also in Australia. Initially, I had thought about applying to US schools, but some of my friends, they actually got their H1B rejected, and their ROI got completely messed up. So that was a kind of risk I was not very willing to take. Plus, Canadian job market, and they are very friendly to international students and immigration also. So that was the main factor that I considered while applying to Canadian schools, and that's why I ditched the idea of applying to US schools, because uh, my purpose of this was also moving to another country and staying there. That wouldn't have been possible in US, along with the pressure of H1B every time.
Hmm.
So that was the main decision that I focused on Canadian schools. Uh, and when I actually talked with your team, so they also helped me narrow down that, okay, these are schools in US also that you can apply, but these are Canadian schools. So I shortlisted based on that.
Right. So how did you get to know about Crackverbal?
I actually was researching about all of the Canadian schools. They have Kira interviews, which I gave for 4 schools, and everybody had the same platform. So I was researching about what kind of questions get asked and how that process is, and about the whole application process. So on YouTube, I came across Arun's videos, and there I felt that, okay, this person is explaining it in a good way, and I contacted your team. I connected with them, and there was some initial calls where we discussed what kind of strategy we are going to follow, and whether my profile is good enough for a lot of schools. And from there, I took it, and some of the schools I wouldn't have even thought about applying to, because my mentors and you pushed to apply those schools. So I did apply to those schools also. So that wouldn't have been possible without your help.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about the application process. Did you think, so when you start the process, there's some concept you have in mind, right? That this is how it is supposed to be.
Yeah.
How was it different than what you expected it to be? And what were the key highlights of the whole application process, especially in your journey?
Okay, so when I started off, I thought that GMAT is supposed to be the toughest part of the application, but that turned out to be very untrue. After I did my GMAT, I thought about applying to the schools on my own initially, and when I started with it, I couldn't even. I mean, it was totally that I'm in a blank space. I don't know how to apply and how to actually follow the structure of this thing. So that is why I connected with your team, that because it'll give me a structured approach of how to actually start getting drafting the resumes, then the application process, how you interact and network with the students there. So that part was not there initially when I started. So I was not very clear about that particular thing. Uh, I gave my GMAT in March, and I started researching about schools in April and May. By that time, even the questions for the schools were not ready. But I looked at the past year question, and looking at that, I was like, okay, I don't know how to actually write for these particular things. So the story is obviously because of the experience I had in mind, but I just didn't know how to put it on paper. And so when I started talking with Kirtana, she told me that, okay, we can connect you to a mentor, and that person actually on the call itself, uh, right from the resume to the SOPs and everything. I mean, it was totally a complete change. If I would have applied without the help, it would have been like I'm applying for a job role, which is not how it is supposed to be. You are applying to a business school, so your resume is totally different. How you explain things to the adcoms, it cannot be in technical terms. So all that total experience, I think, from the time I started to the time I actually applied to the schools, it was a total change of how it came out to be.
Right. So more from, so how many schools did you apply to in total?
So I applied to 4 schools. Initially, I applied to 3 schools, but after I got the admit from third school, I withdrew my application for the fourth school.
Okay. Okay. So, how was the interview process for you? So out of the 3 schools, how many schools did you get interview calls from, and how? Tell me about the process.
So I applied to 3 schools. I got interview from 2 of the schools. The first school I had an interview with, that was for the AdCom member, and the second I had an interview with an alumni. So both were totally different experiences. AdCom interview, it was because it was shorter, 20 minutes interview, so it went like a rapid fire. And uh, I mean, they had questions in mind, specific questions in mind. And with that experience, I got to know that if you're not direct to the point in the storytelling which they want to ask, then if you are playing around, they are going to ask you specific question, and they are going to dig on that till the time you actually answer what they actually want to ask, because they already have your application and everything. They have already read that. So that interview actually it went well according to me, but I got dinged after the interview because it went just like to and fro, and it was totally rapid fire. But that gave me an experience of how I would be approaching the next interview. The alumni interview which I had, it was a little laid back, and we actually ended up talking about our hobbies and our interests, where we traveled. So it was like no, not totally on a why you want to get into this particular school, but a lot of different areas also we talked about in the interview. Uh, and I think the initial interview where I made a mistake was the person was not very convinced whether I actually needed an MBA and why from that particular school. So why MBA, why particular school, and why now? These are the three most important questions in an interview. And if those three are actually going correct, then the whole interview is going to be smooth, because every school will be asking you situational or behavioral questions that are common. But if these three questions are not actually convincing to them, then everything else falls apart. So that I understood going along with the process. So the first school where I didn't even get an interview, I had a video interview at that time. And because it was first time I was giving a video interview, I was a little nervous, and uh, so I was not very sure whether I'll be able to do it, and I got a little nervous during the interview. But after I gave that first video interview also, it was clear that it's not a, I mean, that is the most fun part of the application and the easiest part of the application, because they ask you behavioral questions and totally simple questions. I mean, what would you have done in this particular situation, or where you have traveled? So that is actually the most fun part of the application, and that I got to know along with the process when I was applying to multiple schools. So along with the process, I think I grew, and with the video essays also, and with the interview also, and that actually helped me in the later schools.
Right. How did the Kira part work? So, did for the schools that you applied to, was it after you submitted or after 1 week they send you the questions, right? So, how does that work?
So for the first school, Rotman, which I applied to, so in that uh, it was to be submitted with the application itself, and they give you a week to prepare for it. But obviously, I knew that it is going to be a part of application, so I started preparing initially. I took help of Kirtana for the topics of kind of questions that are there. I asked my mentor, and I recorded some of the videos and sent it to him so that he could give me feedback, the eye contact, and other kind of the speed of my delivery. So that is how I actually prepared for that interview. Plus, Kira Talent, they have this that you can take multiple attempts getting familiar with their platform. So I practiced there and got comfortable with that particular platform. And because it was common across all the Canadian schools, so with time, I think it got so easy that I was like totally enjoying that particular part of the interview.
Right, right. So, more from a perspective that the kind of research that is required when you finalize the kind of school, right? Your final admit was from Alberta, right? So,
Yes.
how did you finally decide that okay, this is the school, and what were your key parameters that fit into perfectly your requirement and the school? Uh,
Okay. So initially, when I started searching about school, it was a naive way to do it, and I looked at only the ranking of the schools, and that's actually not a correct way to look at the schools, because whether you are a fit for the school, what kind of people that school actually takes, and that is also important, and that you get when you talk to alumni. Also, if you are going to get the job, so what kind of your target job is, and so the location of the school is also important, that that school has, I mean, that area has that kind of jobs. So the location and the networking part was very important. And also, I think the ranking did come into play a little bit, because it gives you a little bit of assurance that, okay, these kind of schools have a reputation, and so people do get hired from these schools. Also, I was looking at because I was looking at analytics majors, so I was looking at schools which are not total, uh, I mean, business schools. They have like tech based business schools. So
mm,
that is why I finalized with Alberta. And networking with students helped a lot in this particular thing, because when you talk to people who are actually there, or who are just graduated from there, you get to know a lot about the job market in that particular area, and the internships and kind of companies which are coming there. So that kind of research I put in. Apart from that, I booked slots with the admission committee and also MBA spotlight events because us being the pandemic year, there were no physical MBA fairs there. So a lot of those fairs are where you can ask the questions with that, come and familiarize your profile with them. So that kind of research also went because I was a little higher on the experience side. So I got, I asked the adcoms whether this particular profile is a fit for your school or whether you don't even consider these kind of profiles. So that kind of research actually is very important. And I would say that networking with people on LinkedIn or GMAT Club, but do not limit it to your own demographic. I talked to people who were local Canadian students also. So when I talked to Indian students and Canadian students, so I found that because Indian students, they have just, whether they have spent 1 or 2 years in that particular area, so they are able to tell you about that particular school only, or that particular area's job market only, because they have just been to a single city. When I talk to students who are actually born and brought up in Canada, they had a different view because they were able to compare that how the job markets or schools are actually in different parts because they have lived in multiple cities there. So I would say that don't just limit your networking to Indian students, but connect to students from different places, and that is actually going to help you narrow down the schools and based on what kind of profiles and job markets are there.
Right. That was a very interesting insight, Subrat, because you're right. Most people actually, when they research, they focus only talking to people in a similar demographics just because of the comfort level.
Right.
But, absolutely great insight, on that. Right. So thank you so much. How long did it take once the interview was done? When did you get to know that you've got the admit, and, what was the process after that?
So I actually started applying for the two schools in the first round, and I thought that if I don't make them, then I'll be applying to one school in the second round. After that, if unfortunately if it doesn't happen, I'll be applying to a very safe school in the last round. Alberta, I applied around April. That was their deadline. They didn't had multiple deadlines, and April I applied. By May 1st, I actually got that interview part. So within 15 days, I actually got an interview. I had to schedule an interview within a week, so I took 4 to 5 days for that. Friday, I had an interview, and Monday morning, I actually received an admit. So it went very fast for that particular school.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. Congratulations. And we are really, really happy for you that you got to the school that you were looking for, and, you were looking at the right region, more in terms of your experience. I think Alberta also has a smaller cohort size.
Yeah,
It
that
also
actually,
makes it
yeah,
very close knit
correct.
in terms of the program itself. Right. So congratulations. So what next? How does the process, what is the process, and when do you have to go, and how does it all work for you now?
So right now in process of applying for visa, and I'm communicating with the school whether they're not very sure whether it will be a hybrid model right now or whether it will be completely on campus. But that is something that is changing every day, so they'll be communicating that. Apart from that, I'm taking some Excel courses on the platforms, and because that is very important, and a little bit of Coursera is the site I'm referring to for analytics courses. So I'm just getting little familiarized so that I'm not totally starting from scratch from there. And they are actually going to give me some ideas before I actually get into the classes. So I'm just familiarizing myself with a lot of concepts which I might get in the first year. So that is the only preparation right now I'm doing.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Subrat. This was really, really fun talking to you, and I enjoyed, talking about your, challenges and the journey that you've gone through. I would say over the last 1 year.
Yeah.
I'm sure this will motivate people who are in your shoes like you were last year. And thank you so much, and really, really appreciate that you gave me time on a Saturday afternoon for this particular interview.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Subrat, and all the best. And please let us know if you need any help anytime. More than happy to help you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.